Cool. So I'm going to assemble the frame now. I haven't done anything to this pine since I cut it. This is something I've shown before. It's a piece of wiggle ply, snake ply. I've just kind of rounded the edges. I have it the same width as a belt sander belt, and it's a good backing block for this. And I don't know what grit this is. It's 80, but it's a little old, so it's probably at about 100 grit now. So the edges here are a little sharp on the end, but these are all rounded over. So when I put this together, before I put it together, I'm going to take the edges off. And I wouldn't do this on a TV flat. Wouldn't matter on a TV flat, but on a theater flat with fabric, those edges will go through potentially as it gets older. It may stay tight right at the beginning, but I want to break all the edges. Remember the day when my supplier showed up with pine that had the 16th inch roundover on it, and we had been using pretty square edge stuff, which is accurate, but it had an unbroken edge. And I still remember the head carp at the time because I was pretty young, and we were kind of like, I don't know if I like it, I don't know if I like it, you know, grumpy carpenters. And head carp kind of said, that's pretty nice on my hands. I quite like it on my hands, it's soft. And I thought, that's not stupid. So at any rate, this bench, it has a square corner, and I often use it as a reference. So the first thing I'm going to do is take one of my 2-foot pieces, and I'm going to screw this down. But when I screw it down, I have to be careful where I put the screws, because what I don't want to do is cover over one of the screws with the keystone. So keystone's going to go around here. I don't have a lot of room to put screws in right here, so it's kind of in the middle, but it'll be fine for what we're doing. So I get it right up against the edge, up along the long edge here. I'm doing one-offs, so each flat I'm doing is custom. If I were doing 10 4x10 saw flats, I would create a jig that would hold each piece in exact location, so I wouldn't have to do this. But because I'm building 10 different flats, or 6 different flats, I am quite, I'm not going to waste the time doing a jig for each individual one. They're all one-offs. They're bespoke. There it is. Now, I'm going to put these every 2 feet. This is an 8-foot flat. And what I do is I put a mark, because it's 2.5 inches wide, an inch and a quarter less 2 feet, and 2 foot 1 1/4. And that'll give me my exact position for my toggle. When you're building a TV flat and the width of the material is only 3/4 of an inch, I often won't do that. Well, actually, I often do, but I think a lot of people often don't do that. But and you can get it pretty accurately, but I'd hate to use a center mark on something that's 2.5 inches wide. I wouldn't be able to do it accurately, though I won't speak for anyone else. They may absolutely be able to. And you got to remember, you're measuring from the bottom of the rail when you're doing your 2-foot centers, 2, 4, 6 foot centers. Right. Just transferring my marks so I don't have to measure again. Making sure that's up against there. And then this will locate this piece quite nicely. Okay, so next part of this is pretty straightforward. I want to have the corner blocks and keystones stepped in 7/8 of an inch from the edge of the flat. If these were flats that were put together for a set, the back of the flat would hit the keystone. So actually I want to go a full inch because the keystones and corner blocks. God, it's been a year since I built one of these. It's been a long time. Glad I stopped to explain that, otherwise I would have screwed it up. So and I did not screw the other one into place, but I am giving myself references. So when I put my, there are jigs just to hold it in place. I just didn't make one, which is basically a piece of 1/4 inch something or other that is about this wide with the block, and it holds it in place and whatevs. So I'm just going to give myself a little mark there so I know where to put the glue. And when I was talking about the corner block crossing the seam of the joint is here. Corner block's going to go here, and the grain is going in this direction. Had I cut it so the grain was going in this direction or this direction, I would have to every time look at it, which isn't a big deal, but I've screwed that up before and had to pull it off. So next part of this is, and I'm a very stupid boy. Again, it's been a while since I built one of these. On this particular flat, I always glue the joints. Sherwood is fighting a cold, and bless his cotton socks, he still came out to film today. I said to him, Sherwood, is it a bad day for you to film? And he said, well, I only have a cold. I'm either going to feel like crap at home or I'm going to feel like crap here. Thanks for coming, Sherwood. So, put the corner block in place. And what I'd love to do is a close-up of this so you can see the fastener pattern. The joint is here, and what I'm going to do is on either side of the joint, 2 fasteners. And then I use a 5 pattern. So 2 fasteners, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. And that'll spread it out. It'll compress the glue. When I get this on, I just give this a little bit of a movement to spread out the glue, and then I nail it in position. I'm using 3/4 inch 18 gauge narrow crown 1/4 inch crown staples. And when I put them in, what I do is I put them in so they cross the grain. So the grain's going in this direction. I can go here or here, and I will capture, when I go over it, I'll capture the grain like that. What I don't want to do is go in between the grain. There are times I want to do that, but I don't. I want to go and capture the grain. It's on the back. I want to have as much strength as possible. And I'm just going to repeat that. The toggle once I line this up, make sure the pine is at its 2 marks. I know that I'm going to line up against that line. I want these 2 pieces, these 2 points to line up the outside of the 1x3. I want the 1x3 to line up there. Again, I could screw this in place, but I'm just, I'm being that guy today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same kind of pattern, so it's like looks like a 5 on a 6-sided dice. 1 on either side of the seam, 1 on either side of the seam, 1 in the middle, and 1 in each corner. And the seam is right in between those guys there. Oftentimes when you're going across the grain like that, little bits will stand up. It's easy enough just to clean them up now. I would never use marker. The only reason I'm putting marker on there now is so that you can see what I'm doing. I would never put marker on something that needed to be painted, because the marker will bleed right through the paint, which is badness. The best way I've found to deal with that, even better than sanding it off, is give it a coat of shellac, because the ink won't sink through the shellac, and you can still put most paint or coats on top of that as long as it's not a stain. And so I'm just going to finish doing this here. So one of the things I like to say is this is not the definitive way to do it. This is a way, and it works. Depending on who trained, many people have slightly different methodologies in doing this, but this is one way that works. Use it or not, it's all good. I'm not too precious about it, but I have reasons for most of the things I do. And if I missed explaining something, just go ahead and ask me. Had a little sawdust on it. Didn't want that on the surface. Missed the line. So there's the front of the flat. Next thing I'm going to do is cut the canvas that's going to go on here to staple it in place.